Finally, Ukraine was able to achieve a critical breakthrough in Bakhmut, which dramatically increases the chances of success in this city. And at the same time, according to the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Oleksii Reznikov, Russians are suffering just incomprehensible, mind-blowing, massive losses. And ultimately, as always, nothing, wink wink, is happening in Crimea. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's go straight to the point and see some most recent footage. And as always, we begin with some more portion of cringe material by the ridiculous Russian propaganda. And so recently, they released a new article that Ukrainians allegedly created a new religion, which is called Paganism, Banderism. And what it basically means is that they're closely following the principles of life of their national hero Stepan Bandera, which in some way, for some reason, means that they have to follow Satanism, they have to follow the neo-paganism, and eventually they have to push out all the family values, all the sacrilegious things that Ukrainians have, and replace it with hatred towards Russians. Just yes, specifically one nation. In my wildest dreams I could not even think about this nonsense, but somehow Russian propagandists, they do it every single day. But okay, now to a little bit more serious news. And according to the leader of the party in charge in Armenia, Gagik Milkanyan, he said that if Putin ever arrives to Armenia, he will be arrested, according to the International Criminal Court. And I mean, allegedly, Armenia is supposed to be the friend of Russia, which basically means that now even the friends of Putin, they turn away from him. But okay, next we have this video from the Ministry of Defense of Russia, who claims that the practice of the tactical nuclear forces of Russia have just started. They said that 3,000 people and approximately 300 pieces of military equipment will take part in this training, which to be honest is nothing more than yet another nuclear provocation, empty threat of Russia. But on a serious note, in the last 20 days there have not been a massive attack by Russians, which is only the second time in the last 6 months. And one of the main reasons for this is that Russians are getting critically low on their missile supplies. And in confirmation of this, right here we have a picture from Tambov bread factory. Yes, it is bread factory, and they recently switched to start producing military drones. They are planning to produce 200 drones per month, and in their first month of operation in the month of March, they're getting close to making 16 of them, which is a little bit short from their goal. And just speaking a little bit more about Russian propaganda, they recently made a claim that Ukrainians will create diversion groups, which the main goal of them will be to go inside Belarus and fight against Belarusian authorities. And shortly after this statement, in very convenient timing, allegedly a group of 2 Ukrainian diversion groups using pickup trucks, they tried to go into Bryansk region, which as you can see is right next to Belarus. And according to the Ministry of Defense of Russia, they were eliminated with artillery fire. And speaking about the Bryansk region, if you remember, in the beginning of March, there was this Russian volunteer corps, which is fighting on the Ukrainian side, who entered this region, just to show the Russian authorities that their defenses are not as strong as they think. And immediately after that, the Russian propaganda claimed that this was the Ukrainian diversion group, who came to Russia to fight against unprotected civilians and children. The Russian propaganda has not changed their statements since then, even though those people acknowledged that they are Russians, and recently they even released this video to completely prove that Russian propaganda was saying nonsense. And as you can see, they are not fighting against civilians. In fact, they even stopped the civilian cars and turned them around. The only purpose of this activity was to bring it to the attention of the Russian authorities. The entire video is around 3 minutes long, and trust me, it is extremely interesting to see it, because it uncovers all the lies of the Russian authorities in plain sight. And if you want to see it for yourself, I uploaded it to my Patreon, the link will be down below. And speaking about the Russian propaganda, recently another major propagandist, Olga Skabeyeva, she was pretty much almost crying during one of her live shows, saying, "No, but how is it possible? These Ukrainians were bombing them, were destroying their energy infrastructure, and they still had light and they survived the winter. These Ukrainians, why did you resist it?" And pretty much, yes, as you can see, this is the current condition of the Russian propaganda, which might be equally evil to the Russian authorities. And to be honest, I do not have any single friend or a relative who thinks in the same way about regular Ukrainian people. So I ask you guys to please separate, at least in your minds, the Russian authorities, propagandists and these crazy Z-patriots from just regular Russian people. I thank you so much for your understanding. Please share this message, and you're more than welcome to join this community. And you can do it by simply liking this video and subscribing to my channel. We will be absolutely honored to have you among this group of free will thinking people. And at the same time, you can also feel free to check my second channel, The Russian Dude Clips, where I post under 1-minute summaries every single day. The link will be down below. Alright, now back to the news. And recently, once again, the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Oleksii Reznikov, showed this another video of German armored personnel carriers called Marder, which Ukraine received approximately 40 of them from Germany. Then we have this video of French armored fighting vehicles called AMX-10RC, which Ukraine also recently received. And ultimately, according to the Minister of Defense of Spain, Margarita Robles, the first batch of Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine in the number of 6 will arrive to Ukraine after Easter. And the second batch of 4 will arrive a little bit later, after these tanks are properly maintained. Now, speaking about aerial vehicles, recently the country of Croatia pledged some of its Mi-8 helicopters to Ukraine. And then, according to the Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, Oleksii Danilov, in the near future Ukraine will receive offensive drones with the range of up to 3,000 kilometers. And yes, if you're already feeling a little bit confused with remembering all this Western military equipment and vehicles, apparently Pentagon already released these cards about which we were talking in my previous episode, which basically helps you to learn all this stuff just by playing card games. And while Ukraine only constantly increases its military vehicles' combat power, Russia continues to do some ridiculous things. And one of them is to create again these fakes of military vehicles, such as for example this book, as you can see from this picture, which to be honest look nothing like the real machine. And so yes, just let me know in the comments whether you're confused whether this was real or not. But I think the answer is pretty obvious. Recently, once again, quote-unquote, nothing happened in Crimea, so let's talk about this really quick before we can talk about the situation in the east. And so, as you can see from this video, recently a very loud noise have been heard in the area close to Gvardeyskaya Air Base, and Russians said that nothing happened, it was just something that fell in the open field, and nothing was destroyed. According to the Russian propaganda, this was a Ukrainian drone called Strish, which to be honest is an extremely big drone, and it just cannot disappear like that. But long story short, Russians said that they were able to intercept it with the drone gun. And so yes, just putting aside all these questions where all the remains of this drone went, basically we have this picture from the locals in this area, and they said that this place of impact was actually on the territory of Gvardeyski airfield. But okay, because then, according to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, Russians continue their routine fire across the Zaporozhye front line, but Ukrainians they respond as well, and recently some very loud noises have been reported in Melitopol. Alright, and now as promised, let's talk about the situation in the east, and then we'll talk about this most recent crucial success of Ukrainians in Bakhmut. And first of all, right here we have a picture from Belgorod, where once again some very loud noises have been reported. Then we go back to Ukraine, where according to once again report by the Institute for the Study of War, Russians continue their offensive along Kupiansk-Svatove-Kreminna front line without achieving any significant success. But then according to the Ukrainian side, they were able to destroy a Russian mortar firing position located in Ploshanka. As you go more to the south, Ukrainians reportedly were also able to destroy a Russian military base located in Berestove. And then right here is the video of Ukrainians using one of the very first Western pieces of military equipment, Humvees, somewhere along eastern front lines. It just shows you how quickly and agile this particular military vehicle can make Ukrainian units when they can just arrive on the spot, fire a couple of shots and then leave, all in under 1 minute. I uploaded the full version of this video with sound along with all the other footage from today's episode to my Patreon. There is still 1 week of free access and you can find the link down below. And then, as you go to Bakhmut itself, recently Russians tried to advance to the Bakhmut city council from the south of this building, but Ukrainians were able to successfully and easily repel this assault group and pretty much destroy them. And in addition to that, Ukrainians were able to down a Russian tactical bomber Su-24M in Bakhmut proximity. And ultimately, according to, once again, Institute for the Study of War, and I promise this is the last time I refer to them in this video, but long story short, they say that in one entire week, in the one whole week, Russians were only able to capture no more than 5% of Bakhmut. And yes, you guessed it, it came at a cost of hundreds and probably even thousands of lives. But nevertheless, the defense of Bakhmut still stands, because according to the highest Ukrainian authorities, such as for example the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Oleksii Reznikov, the losses of Russians in this specific city are just mind-blowingly massive. And as for now, this is one of the main reasons why Ukrainians still keep defending this city. And so right now, let's talk about the reason number 2. So yes, according to the most recent report by the British intelligence, the fighting in Bakhmut obviously still continues, but at a much reduced pace from the Russian side. And one of the main reasons behind this, besides huge Russian losses, is that a lot of Wagner contracts already expired, and as many as 5,000 Wagner soldiers have been pardoned and sent home. And because of this, it recently allowed Ukrainians to achieve a critical success in fighting inside Bakhmut. And what they basically did is they were able to push Russians further away from the critical highway 0506. This road is located right here, it goes through Khromovy and all the way to Chasev Yar, and Ukrainians have been using it to resupply their forces inside Bakhmut. And to be honest, this is already the second highway that Ukrainians are using, with the first one being the one goes through Ivanovsky city. Previously, Russians almost captured this highway, but because of the reduce of the pace of their offensive, Ukrainians were able to fight back and retain the control over this road. And because honestly I do not think that Russians will be able to retake it in the near future, because once again the offensive has significantly slowed down and potentially it's even its near culmination. Right now Ukrainians have the possibility to use both of these roads, which makes the resupply of the defenders of Bakhmut twice more effective. So as you can see, for the last several months the combat activity across entire Ukraine has been concentrated in this small city. And so the only logical question right now, why the victory in Bakhmut is now more crucial than ever for both sides. Which brings me to the reason number 2 why Ukraine keeps defending Bakhmut. And according to President Zelensky himself, in case Ukraine loses this city, just these regular Ukrainian citizens will start feeling extremely tired and exhausted from this war. At the same time, in one way or another, Russia will present this victory in Bakhmut as a major accomplishment to their people, and then they will use it to pretty much pressure the Western countries to start talking to Ukraine, to find some compromises and start negotiating negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. But on the other hand, if Ukraine wins in Bakhmut, this will be a turning point in this war. Russia will be crushed in the one and only battle they could have won, and pretty much the Western world will see this as an opportunity to help Ukraine to finally end this war. The Russian people, and especially the Russian soldiers, will feel extremely demoralized. Ukraine will be the opposite, they'll be extremely motivated, and with the help of Western military vehicles, this will pretty much allow them to rapidly liberate their territories. But as you might already know it, Russian forces already right now are not in their best shapes of their minds, and the morale is extremely low. And so some reconnaissance forces, according to this article, they already start refusing the orders of their commanders, despite the consequences, which will obviously contribute to Ukraine in seizing the advantage in the east, and then starting their own counteroffensive. And just once again, if you don't want to miss any of these events as soon as they start happening, just please consider subscribing to my channel. It only takes one click. And if you want to support my work financially, please consider becoming my channel member, use the PayPal link, or become my Patreon, where there's still 1 week of free access. You can find all the other links to the right and down below. Thank you so much for your attention, товарищи, and see you tomorrow.